Hi, this is Diane Scott, and welcome back to the Best Boss Podcast. It's a podcast where we help leaders research, rethink, and redefine their leadership, actually through the lens of real stories and practical tips and wisdom from people who've really seen it all. And I am so pleased to present our guest host. This is Corey Rosen. He's someone who's actually mastered the art of storytelling, not just on stage, but across industries and movies and television. He's an Emmy award winning writer, producer, director, and storyteller. Corey has led, your career's been like 20 years, and it's spanned all industries over the entertainment world with movies, television, formats, and audience. And I'm just thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane. It's so nice to be here.
How I met you, though, is through something called the Story Slam host on the Moth uh, Radio Hour.
Mhm.
And that's on an affiliate of NPR and
Yep.
a podcast. And the podcast is fantastic. I listen to it all the time. But you're also the author of two great stand-up books, Your Story Well Told, and the latest, A Story for Everything, which helps people craft powerful stories at work and school and in life, and even a wedding. I love the wedding toast. So, hey, thank you, Corey, and thank you so much to the Best Boss Podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, I'm a fan and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So, talk to me about leadership and storytelling, and what's the connection there?
Yeah, sure.
Why is it important?
Yeah. So the ways that we are generally communicating with each other, whether that be with our employees or whether it's with our clients, with our customers, with our internal communications, is or should be by and large through the stories that we tell. Storytelling is the way I like to look at it is the shortest distance between two people is a good story. If you find yourself communicating with people through just to-do lists or bullet points, odds are there's something missing in your overall communication. So what I've really kind of put my focus on and try to help people understand is that there's a story there. There's a way of using and telling your story. And by doing so, you have a much higher chance of that person really getting you and understanding your message, your point. So something maybe we should like rewind and start in with is like, well, what do we mean by a story? Like, are we just telling like, fables to each other? Are we spinning yarns? Like there's a context of like what a story is. So the context that I'm using here, and this goes for business stories as well as personal stories, or as you mentioned, could be wedding toasts or eulogies or fundraising letters or whatever it is one of two definitions that I like to lean on. The first is that a story could be something in which something changes from beginning to end. There was some state, it was like this, something happened which tilted how everything has kind of been perceived or executed, and in the end, it ended up this other way. And so the story is how did it change? How did it go from state A to state B or state Z or whatever that is? And by communicating change through the story, you're not just telling me what happened, but you're telling me why. How was the world? How is the company? How is the customer impacted by the thing that happened? So that's
Yeah,
kind of, go ahead.
A story for everything. All I kept thinking is, I bet some of the people that I have coached over the years would say that they're not a good storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
In your book, you outlined almost that arc
Mm-hmm.
on how to do it.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, this is good for people. Like, there's not people that naturally tell stories, and sometimes you think the stories, like, how is that relevant? But when you talked about the arc, or I call it
Yeah.
the
Sure.
transition that you just described, it almost gave a roadmap in your book on how to
Yeah.
do it well.
Yeah. And what you were calling the arc, I learned from one of my teachers named Ken Adams, is I call it the spine. So I look at a story in its spine, the bones that take you from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. And the story spine, as you called out, is a way that anybody could take anything and turn it into a story. So it's a story making machine. So you could say, okay, here's this thing that happened to me. So I'm going to flip this for a second. Has anything happened to you recently? It doesn't have to be a story, just like a thing that happened to you recently, Diane.
Too many to count.
Yeah, anything like specific that, and again, it doesn't have to be interesting or
Right now we're
historical.
having a hell of a storm.
Perfect.
And
So
I
there's a
knew,
storm.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and I knew that I was doing this podcast. And I thought, okay, what if the electricity goes out?
Okay, can we pause there for a second?
Sure.
Because this is not a story yet, but for the astute listener who is maybe catching on, it's like we're going to turn Diane's incident or anecdote. An anecdote is just something that happened into a story. And like, we're going to look at like, what's the difference? Like an anecdote, this thing happened. I had to do a podcast and there's a big storm outside. And so I was worried about the weather, right? So that's not a story yet because nothing has happened. But what we do have in the story spine stuff, sort of sense, is a couple of elements. We have the once upon a time, right? Once upon a time, there was a big rainstorm, right? And pouring down rain, buckets and rattling the house with thunder and lightning. Maybe we'll be specific in our language, right? Still don't have a story. All we have is a setting, right? The next part of the story spine is the everyday of the story. What's normal? And every day, as an executive coach and a podcaster, I have to communicate with people using Zoom, using technology, in short, using powered appliances and electronics that are reliant on me having power and connectivity. Until one day, so this is the tilt of the story, until one day I scheduled the best interview I was ever going to have with the storytelling expert, Corey Rosen. Of the Moth, yes. So, okay, so already here, maybe I've over-exaggerated myself a tiny bit, but regardless, what we do is we've taken your elements, we've taken the world of the story, it's raining, the everyday of the story. This is what I normally do until one day, and now we have the why is this day different from all other days? Why is this worth listening to? Because ideally, even in these first three lines of the story, we've created in the listener, in the reader, something, hopefully some curiosity, some anticipation, some curiosity, like, well, then what happened? Did you get the interview? Did the power go out? How did it go? So just by launching your story in that direction, you've created interest from your listener.
Very good. Very good. It's interesting because the story actually isn't about the weather. It's the fact that 10 years ago, I would have lost my mind over. Now I'm thinking, okay, the perspective that I've had with life and things happen like this is, you know what? I got a phone. The phone has a battery. I got a flashlight. I could mount it on my dresser. Actually, I have it on my dresser. Okay. Like it taught me and if all that doesn't work, it's audio.
Okay. All right. So let's pause you for a second because I'm going to now take everything you just said. I feel like I'm your therapist for a second, but it's okay. But here we go. So what you've actually just opened up is now we're into the heart of the story. So I have to do this thing. So the next part of the story spine, after you do once upon a time, every day, until one day, we get to because of that. So because of that, I thought about all these interviews that I've been doing for so long. And I thought, and because of that, I worried like, this is my undoing. My own mentality around the worry is the thing that's been holding me back. And because of that, I realized I have the tools to do this. I am good at doing my job. And because of that, and because of that, and because of that. So now what we're doing is we're now in the heart of not just the story, but of you, the character in the story. And what you've actually already started doing, which is like kind of the best thing that I could teach to a storyteller or to a business storyteller, especially, is there's this little like triumvirate of stories. There's the what, there's the how, but what you've just gotten to is the why, the heart of it. So what you've gotten to is not just that I have to do this job and how I'm planning to do this job, but this is the heart. This is the reason that I'm doing this. I want to help you want to help people tell their stories. you can find a way to do that, even if the lights go out, even if the power goes out, even if the cellular section goes out. You can create that some other way. So the learning at the end of this story is what did you learn from this mentality and this experience?
Well, it's worry. The worry may cause preparedness, but in the end, it's okay.
Oh, yes.
It's also nice to see how I would be 10 years ago.
Yes, yes. So within your story, there's a flashback to old Diane,
There's
right?
a flashback to worrying about everything to, you know what?
To worry Diane.
You
But
know,
then there's also a takeaway. There's an until finally I let go. I said it's gonna be what it's gonna be, and the episode's gonna be the episode, or the conversation gonna, and then ever since that day, I realized that you got to show up and you got to be with and find the story or find the guest or find the experience as it is, not how I need it to
yeah.
be in some pre-fashioned way. I don't know. I'm just spinning
No, I
here.
know I'm catching on, but I'm wondering how, like, I can hear my leaders screaming in my head. Coach quite a few leaders in quite a few industries, and I
Mm,
can hear them saying, "But what if I don't have a story?"
great question.
For me, it's as a coach and
Yeah,
as a former healthcare leader, I got tons. Okay,
yeah.
but what do you say to somebody who's like, I don't know if I have a story?
I mean, generally, here's the thing.
Mhm.
Generally, you're full of stories. Like you specifically have millions of stories, but like people in general have lots of stories that they maybe don't realize.
Mm.
I kind of liken it to like if somebody says like, "Hey, tell me a joke," and you're like, "I don't know any jokes," and then I'll start to tell you a joke and be like, "Oh, I totally know this joke," and you can say the punchline of the joke.
Exactly.
Stories are like that. If you have no specific story to tell, but you open that door with the person you're talking to and you say like, "Hey, has anything interesting happened recently?" and kind of create a moment where they're telling you a story, very likely that will remind you of something, and there will be a corollary experience or story that you could then not only tell them, but maybe even sync up with like the point that you want to make. Maybe like, I'm glad that you mentioned that because that connects to something that I want to talk to you about, which is a way that we're trying to be better collaborators in the office, or a way that we're trying to streamline some of our product line, or whatever it is. If there's something outgoing or internal, um, the best way to be a good storyteller is to be a story listener, is to listen to other people's stories. And if you are seen as a boss, as a good listener, then you will be more respected in your office. It's not about you having the answer all the time, but your willingness to listen to other people's experiences and stories, and maybe turning those stories into stories that you tell to others. You're going to learn from their experiences or their feedback.
Different than an antidote or
Yeah.
a fable. It's actually, has a spine. The most
Yeah.
powerful have a spine, and I think that any leader, like our, what we're researching is the characteristics of best bosses, and best bosses get outcomes through people. They By putting people first, outcomes follow.
Yeah.
And the more they're able to develop people and help bring that out in people and have those people tell their stories, that actually, it's almost potentiates itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a good piece. Now,
It's a great practice. And then
yeah,
as a leader too, there's a tendency, I think, if you were to sort of just expect your reports to spin up a story out of nothing, it is just as likely, just like you're like, oh, I don't have any stories. Like there's going to be maybe this safety wall that people will put up, and they'll build a little fortress of like, I got no stories. I don't know what you're talking about. So one of the things that I encourage people to do, and it's what I write about in a lot of my books, is there are ways of kind of activating memories and stories through play. There's ways of actually sort of engaging. There's a lot of neuroscience that kind of points to this, that activities, exercises, some of them kind of drawn from what we call the applied improvisation sort of toolkit, And I don't mean improvisation in like the Whose Line Is
Yeah.
It Anyway, like silly comedy club. I mean improvisation of like, let's do an activity where we are being in the moment, we're building on somebody else's ideas, saying yes to them, and creating a space where we can be ourselves.
Mm.
When we as bosses and leaders can cultivate somehow ways where people can feel heard and seen, then those quiet voices that have great ideas but maybe are too scared or shy to mention them can
So
bring them
storytelling
up.
can be a conduit
Absolutely. So we
for bringing that
use the storytelling to bring those out. One way of doing that, this is a tip for leaders, is instead of making them tell the story to the whole conference table and say,
Mm.
everybody gets go around and tell a story, because then it's a contest. Who's got the best story? Who's good at it? I'm not good at it. I'm not going to go, right? You're just going to, again, put up those walls. But if you pair people up, you're going to tell something, an idea that you had this week about something, or a story, or whether it's tactical to the meeting's purpose or something personal. Get everybody to tell a story at the same time, get them all in pairs, and
Mm.
maybe only 1 minute long, set a timer, and then the other person goes for a minute. And at the end of 2 minutes of clock time, the whole room has shifted. The
Yeah.
feeling in the room has shifted from like the, oh boy, now I'm going to listen to whoever it is at the head of the table, what they have to say for the next hour, to I'm hearing my voice. I have a voice in this room, and the whole room shifts. Now, when we have a conversation, people who are quiet might be more interested and engaged and willing to participate.
Oh, well done. Well done. Thank you so much. This has been extraordinarily helpful, especially, and I found your book exceptionally helpful as well, because it pre-answered some of my questions about what if I don't have those stories? How do I get other people to do this? I've never done this. It also made storytelling more of a leadership technique versus an entertainment thing that you do. You know, like it
Yeah.
shifted to a practical use for leaders. Um, Corey, how do people get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, which
Mhm,
is my name, CoreyRosen.com.
mhm,
It's spelled Coreyrosen.
mhm. And what are the
And
types of things that you do?
so I do three main things through my company, which is called Your Story Well Told. We help people tell their stories. So that means that if you have a story already, we can work with you to help ghostwrite or co-create or work together to coach you into telling or writing your story. The second thing we do is, just like we did here, is teaching tools so that you can write your own story. So that might be workshops that we'll do, or one-on-one coaching to give you the tools that you need to help tell your story better.
Mm.
Again, this works with marketing teams, sales teams, all company meetings, where we need to be better storytellers. I can give you tools to activate that yourselves. And lastly, I can produce your story. So if you've got a story, you've got an idea, I have years and years in video and film production, and also live stage and event planning, and even theme park event creation. So if you've got an idea that needs a stage to put it on, I can help you manifest it and make that a reality.
Corey, the wealth of experience that you bring to this is phenomenal. And I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. And thank you so much. And I look forward to watching your career as it unfolds and the impact that you're having for my leaders, and leaders throughout the country and the world that really are looking for ways to be more impactful as best bosses. So thank you so much. And thank you.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you. This is Diane Scott. Thank you for listening to the Best Boss podcast.